The day I walked across that stage, my family left my seat empty on purpose, then pretended it was an accident. I smiled for the cameras anyway, but something in me went quiet and cold. I changed my name, disappeared, and built a life they couldn't touch. Years later, a certified letter arrived for the woman I used to be, and it demanded my signature. The steam from the hotel shower fogged the mirror, turning my reflection into a gray ghost. I wiped a hand across the glass, staring at the face of a woman who was 34 years old, about to walk across a stage and accept a Master of Fine Arts degree, and who was currently trying to convince herself that she did not care if her parents were sitting in the audience. It was a lie. Of course, I cared with a desperate, humiliating intensity that I had spent 2 decades trying to suffocate. For weeks, I had downplayed this day. When I told my colleagues at the library where I worked part-time, I shrugged and called it a formality. When my cohort planned the after-party, I said I might drop by, making it sound like a chore. I had learned early that in the Price family, big moments were targets. If you displayed pride, you were arrogant. If you showed excitement, you were childish. If you asked for attention, you were needy. The only safe way to exist was to be nondescript, low maintenance, and useful. But this was different. This was 2 years of late nights, of writing until my fingers cramped, of eating oatmeal for dinner to save money, of proving to myself that I had a voice worth hearing. I wanted them to see it, just once. I wanted them to witness me finishing something they had not chosen for me. I walked into the small kitchenette of the rented suite. My phone sat on the laminate counter, black and silent. My mother had insisted on the logistics. 2 months ago, she had demanded I send the digital invite to the shared family calendar, a digital tyrant that ruled our lives. If it was not on the calendar, it did not exist. If it was on the calendar and you missed it, it was your fault for not setting the correct alert settings. I had sent the invite. I had sent 3 reminders, 2 weeks ago. My mother had called. Her voice had that specific, airy warmth she used when she was performing the role of the good mother for an audience I could not see. "We are so proud. Kennedy," she had said, "we booked the flights. Your father is already complaining about the legroom. But we will be there. We would not miss it." The tone had been right, but the texture was wrong. It was flat, like a script reading. But I had taken the bait. I had let myself imagine the dinner afterward. I had let myself imagine my father raising a glass, not looking at his phone, not making a joke about how expensive the tuition was, but just looking at me. I checked the time. It was 8 in the morning. The ceremony began at 10. I needed to be at the staging area by 9. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with my father's name, Dad. My stomach did a slow, sick rollover. He never called this early unless something was broken or someone was bleeding. I slid the icon to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice tight. "Kennedy," he said. He sounded harassed. The background noise a chaotic mix of traffic and what sounded like a siren. "Listen, we have a situation." My hand gripped the edge of the counter. "What is it? Are you at the airport?" "No." "We are not at the airport," he snapped, as if I were an idiot for assuming they would be where they were supposed to be. "We are at urgent care. It is your Aunt Linda. She fainted at breakfast, just collapsed right over her eggs." Aunt Linda. I blinked. Aunt Linda lived 3 towns over from my parents. "Why was she with them? She came to see us off," my father said, anticipating the question. "She wanted to wish us luck." Then boom, she is on the floor. "It looks like her blood pressure again. Your mother is a wreck." She is in the back with the doctors now. I felt the familiar slide of guilt, a heavy, oily sensation in my chest. I was standing here worrying about my cap and gown while my aunt was unconscious. "Is she okay?" I asked. "Do you want me to come?" "No. Do not be dramatic," he said. "You are 3 states away. What are you going to do?" "Hold her hand. Just stay put. We are waiting on the doctor. I just wanted you to know we might be a little behind schedule." Behind schedule, I looked at the clock. "The ceremony starts in 2 hours. Dad, I know when it starts. Kennedy, I can read a calendar. Just keep your phone on. Do not go into the venue yet where you lose signal. I need to be able to reach you if this goes sideways. But I have to check in. I said, my voice rising. I have to line up. Just wait, he said, his voice dropping into that warning growl that meant I was being selfish. Your aunt is lying on a gurney and you are worried about lining up. Just give us 20 minutes. I will call you back when we are in the car. He hung up. I stood in the silence of the hotel room. My graduation gown hung on the back of the bathroom door. A black synthetic shroud. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. 8:15, 8:30. My phone remained dark. At 8:45, my group chat with my cohort started lighting up. Where are you? Sarah wrote. We are taking photos by the fountain at here. Kennedy. The lighting is perfect. I typed a response. My fingers trembling. Family emergency. Delayed. Take them without me. I erased it. It sounded too dramatic. It sounded like I was asking for pity. Running late. I typed instead. Save me a spot in line. I stared at the phone. Call me. I willed it. Just call me and tell me you are on the way. 9 in the morning. I could not wait anymore. If I did not check in, they would scratch my name from the roll call. I grabbed my gown, my cap, and my purse, and I ran out the door. The drive to the arena was a blur of red lights and panic. I kept my phone in the cup holder, glancing at it every 4 seconds. Nothing. When I parked, the lot was already full of families, fathers carrying bouquets of roses, mothers adjusting tassels, grandparents walking slowly with canes, looking proud and tired. It was a sea of people who had shown up. I ran toward the student entrance, clutching my gown. The humidity was already rising, making the polyester stick to my arms. I checked my phone again. 9:15. I dialed my father. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I dialed my mother. Straight to voicemail. I dialed my sister. Ashley. Ashley was the golden child. She was 2 years younger, married to a man who sold commercial real estate, and had a smile that looked great on Instagram. She had said she might drive separately, that she had some errands to run in the city before the ceremony. The phone rang and rang. No answer. I stopped near the entrance, breathing hard. I opened our family text thread. I am at the venue. I typed, checking in now. Please let me know when you get here so I can look for you. I hope Aunt Linda is okay. The status changed to delivered. Then, a moment later, read. They had seen it. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. They were coming. They were just busy dealing with the crisis. They had seen the message, which meant they were on their way. I went inside. The chaos of the staging area was overwhelming. Hundreds of graduates in black robes were milling around, finding their alphabetical places. I found my spot between a guy named Powell and a woman named Quinn. Hey, you made it, Quinn said, adjusting her hood. We were worried. Everything okay? Fine, I said. Just a family hiccup. They are on their way. We stood there for 45 minutes. The air conditioning was blasting, but I was sweating. Every time the doors opened to let in latecomers, I craned my neck. 10 minutes before the procession, I checked my phone one last time. Still no reply. But I had a notification from Instagram. I shouldn't have looked. I knew, deep down in the reptile part of my brain, that looking would hurt, but I tapped the icon anyway. It was a photo posted 3 minutes ago. It was my sister, Ashley. She was holding a mimosa glass, the orange juice bright against the sunlight. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a sundress. The caption read, Sunday Funday with the Besties Brunch Vibes. I stared at the location tag. It was a bistro called The Garden Table. It was in this city. It was 20 minutes away from the arena. In the background of the photo, blurry but unmistakable, was the profile of my mother. She was looking at a menu, looking calm, looking completely unbothered by the fact that her sister had supposedly just collapsed and her daughter was about to graduate. My father's arm was visible on the edge of the frame, his distinct gold watch catching the light. There was no urgent care. There was no fainting. There was no crisis. They were eating eggs Benedict across town. The floor seemed to tilt. The noise of the room, the laughter, the nervous chatter, the rustle of robes dropped away into a dull, underwater roar. They lied. It wasn't just that they weren't coming. They had manufactured a scenario to ensure I would be anxious, distracted, and waiting for them. They had wanted me to be staring at my phone instead of celebrating with my friends. They had wanted me to be worried about Aunt Linda instead of thinking about myself. Kennedy Quinn touched my arm. "Hey, are you okay?" "You look like you're going to pass out." I looked at her. Her face was kind, open, concerned. I shoved my phone into my pocket. "I am fine," I said. My voice sounded jagged, like stones grinding together. "I am fine." The music started. The pomp and circumstance march. The sound of 1,000 endings and beginnings. We began to move. Walking into the arena was a physical blow. The applause was a wall of sound. Flashbulbs popped like lightning. People were screaming names, holding signs, blowing air horns. I walked with my head up. I forced the muscles in my face to freeze into a neutral mask. "Do not cry," I told myself. "Do not let them see you crumble." I scanned the stands. I knew they weren't there, but old habits die hard. I looked for them. I looked for the empty seats where they should have been. I saw Sarah's parents. I saw Quinn's husband waving a giant cardboard cutout of her face. I saw joy everywhere, and I saw the empty space where I stood. When they called my name, Kennedy Elise Price, I walked across the stage. The dean shook my hand. He smiled. A professional, practiced smile. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you," I whispered. I took the diploma cover. It was empty. The real paper would be mailed later. It felt fitting. I was holding an empty leather folder, pretending it was heavy with meaning. I walked down the steps and back to my seat. I sat down. I folded my hands in my lap. I stared at the back of the person in front of me for the next hour and a half. I did not check my phone again. When the ceremony ended, the arena dissolved into chaos. Families rushed the floor. Hugs, tears, balloons. I stood by the exit, holding my empty folder. Quinn came up to me, holding a massive bouquet of lilies and roses. She looked at me, then looked around. "Where are they?" she asked. "They couldn't make it." I said, "The car broke down." I lied so easily. I lied to protect them. I lied because the truth that they were eating brunch and laughing while I walked alone was too pathetic to speak aloud. "Oh no," Quinn said. "That sucks. Here." She pulled a smaller bunch of daisies out of her massive bouquet. "Take these," she said. "My mom bought way too many. Seriously. Take them. You can't look empty-handed." I took the flowers. They were warm from her hand. "Thanks," I said. I walked to my car alone. I threw the gown in the back seat. I threw the borrowed flowers on top of it. I drove back to the hotel in silence. I did not cry. I felt cold. I felt hollowed out, as if someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything soft, leaving only bone. Back in the room. I sat on the bed. It was 3 p.m. My phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. I stared at the screen. The audacity of it. Were they calling to keep up the charade? Did they think I was stupid? I answered. "Hello, Kennedy." Aunt Linda's voice was bright, chirpy. "Congratulations. Honey, I am so proud of you." I paused. She didn't sound like someone who had fainted 6 hours ago. She didn't sound like someone recovering from a medical emergency. "Thank you, Aunt Linda," I said slowly. "How are you feeling, me?" "I am fine, honey. Just fighting this heat. Why, Dad said you fainted." I said, "He said they were at urgent care with you. That is why they missed the ceremony." There was a silence on the line, a long, confused silence. What Aunt Linda said, "Kennedy, I haven't seen your parents in weeks. I am in Florida. I came down to visit your cousin for the weekend." The cold inside me deepened, turning into ice. "They said you fainted." I repeated. "Dad called me at 8 this morning. He said you collapsed at breakfast. That man." Linda sighed, but it was a dismissive, chuckling sigh. "He always gets his wires crossed. Maybe he meant your great-aunt Miller knows. She is in a home. I don't know. Kennedy, They told me they went down yesterday. I asked your mother why you didn't wave at them on the live stream. I watched it on my iPad. You looked beautiful, and she said you must not have seen them because they had to leave early to beat traffic. They weren't there. Linda. I said, "Oh, honey, surely they were." Your mother said the seats were uncomfortable. You know how she complains. They were not there. I said, I could hear the doubt in her voice. She didn't want to believe me. It was easier to believe that I was mistaken, that I was being sensitive, than to believe her brother and sister-in-law were sociopaths. Well, she said, her voice faltering, I am sure it was just a mix-up. But I am proud of you. You did good. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. The room was darkening as the afternoon sun dipped lower. They had lied to me. They had lied to her. They had constructed two different lies to cover one simple truth they did not want to come. No, that wasn't it. Not wanting to come was one thing. They could have just said no. This was active. This was a sabotage. They wanted to ruin the morning. They wanted me anxious. They wanted me looking for them. And then they wanted to gaslight the rest of the family into thinking they had been there, or had tried to be there, and that I was the ungrateful one for not seeing them. I picked up the phone and dialed my mother. She answered on the second ring. Hi, honey, we are just driving back. Traffic is a nightmare. Where are you? I asked. I told you. On the highway. Did you get the diploma? I saw the photo. Mom. There was a pause, a tiny, microsecond pause where the calculation happened. What photo? She asked. Her voice smooth. Ashley's photo, at the garden table, the one posted at 10 this morning, while I was walking. Another pause. Then, a sigh, a heavy, victimized sigh. Kennedy, honestly, you are stalking your sister's social media on your graduation day. That is a little obsessive, isn't it? You weren't at the hospital, I said. Aunt Linda is in Florida. So we stopped for food. She snapped. The tone changed instantly. The warmth evaporated, replaced by the icy, jagged edge I knew so well. We were starving. Your father was having low blood sugar. We tried to get to the venue, but the parking was impossible. We drove around for 20 minutes and couldn't find a spot. You said you were at urgent care. We were going to go. We thought it was serious, but then we got a text that it was a false alarm. Aunt Linda didn't text you. She is in Florida. Oh, stop it, she said. Stop trying to catch us in a lie like you are some kind of detective. We came all this way. Kennedy, we drove 4 hours, and instead of saying thank you, you are attacking us. You didn't come. I said, I looked for you. We were in the back. You didn't look hard enough. You never look for us. Kennedy, you are always so focused on yourself. It is not like you were valedictorian. It was just a master's degree. Everyone has one these days. The words hit me like physical slaps. But strangely, they didn't hurt as much as they usually did. They felt clarifying. You posted a brunch photo while I was on stage. I said, we were celebrating you, she cried. We were toasting you, God. You are so difficult. You act like we committed a crime because we wanted to eat. Stop trying to punish everyone with your emotions. It is exhausting. She hung up. I stared at the phone. Stop trying to punish everyone with your emotions. That was the line. That was always the line. If I cried, I was manipulative. If I asked why they missed my birthday, I was keeping score. If I pointed out a contradiction, I was argumentative. They had set the board so that I could never win. If I got angry now, they would tell the rest of the family I was hysterical. They would tell Aunt Linda I screamed at them after they drove all that way. They would twist the narrative until I was the villain, and they were the weary, long-suffering parents of a volatile daughter. I looked at the phone. I looked at the text messages I had sent, the read receipts. I opened the Notes app on my phone. I created a new folder. I named it Exit. I sat there and typed, May 18th, 2024. Graduation. Dad called at 9:02 a.m. Claimed Aunt Linda fainted. Told me to wait. Aunt Linda is in Florida. Confirmed by call at 3:15 p.m. Sister posted photo at the garden table at 10:05 a.m. Parents visible in background. Mom claimed parking was impossible. Mom claimed they were in the back. Mom claimed they were toasting me. I wrote it all down, every contradiction, every timestamp. I thought about the past, my 16th birthday, when they forgot to pick me up from practice because the calendar didn't sync, my high school graduation, where they showed up an hour late because Dad lost the keys, though I found the keys on the hook later. It wasn't incompetence, it wasn't accidental. It was a system designed to keep me small, to keep me waiting, to keep me grateful for scraps. They didn't just forget my graduation, they stole it. They took a day that was supposed to be about my achievement and turned it into a day about their crisis, their hunger, their needs, and they were counting on me to do what I always did: swallow it. Apologize for being upset. Come to Christmas dinner and smile, and let them make jokes about how drama-prone I was. I stood up. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. I looked at the woman in the mirror. She looked tired, but she looked different. The desperate need for their approval was gone. It had died somewhere between the empty seat and the mimosa photo. I had a ticket to the department after-party at a bar downtown. I hadn't planned on going. I had planned on having dinner with my family. I put on a clean shirt. I put on lipstick. I went to the party. I drank a beer. I laughed when Quinn made a joke about the dean's toupee. I smiled. I functioned. But under the noise of the bar, under the music and the clinking glasses, I was already gone. I was calculating the balance in my savings account. I was mentally scanning the map of the United States for places where no one knew the name price. I wasn't going to fight them. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a breakdown they could use against me. I was going to do exactly what they had trained me to do. I was going to be quiet. I was going to be invisible. And then I was going to disappear. The weeks following graduation were a master class in performance art, to the outside world, and specifically to my family. I was exactly who I had always been. Kennedy the reliable, Kennedy the quiet, Kennedy the slightly disappointing daughter with the art degree and the mid-level library job. I answered my mother's texts within the hour. I liked my sister's photos of her new patio furniture. I listened to my father complain about the cost of car insurance for 40 minutes on a Tuesday night without interrupting. I was a ghost in my own life, haunting the rooms I had built for myself. But underneath the sheet, I was sharpening a knife. The leaving plan lived in a small, spiral-bound notebook that I kept tucked inside the lining of my winter boots in the back of my closet. It was a physical thing, not digital. I had learned my lesson about digital footprints. Step 1 was financial decoupling. I drove 2 towns over, to a credit union that had no branches in my hometown. The lobby smelled of stale coffee and carpet cleaner. I sat across from a woman named Brenda who had photos of her grandchildren taped to her monitor. "I would like to open a checking account," I said. Brenda smiled. "Just you?" "Or a joint account." "Just me," I said, "and I need to make sure that no mail ever goes to my home address." "We can do paperless," she said. "I need a guarantee," I said, and my voice was so flat, so serious, that Brenda stopped typing and looked at me over her reading glasses. "If a single piece of paper goes to my current address, it puts me in a difficult position. Can we set it to a P.O. box?" I had rented the box an hour earlier at a shipping center in a strip mall. Box number 402. It was a metal drawer in a wall of metal drawers, and the key felt heavy and cold in my pocket. It was the first thing I owned that they did not know about. I deposited $400 money I had made selling old textbooks and clothes at a consignment shop. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was the seed money for a life where I didn't have to ask permission to exist. Step 2 was the job search. I spent my lunch breaks at the library using a public terminal, not my staff computer, searching for positions in states I had never visited. I looked at rental listings in Oregon. I looked at civil service exams in Vermont. I looked at university registrar jobs in New Mexico. I was casting a net into the void, waiting for anything to snag. But the hardest part was the acting. It was Sunday dinner, 2 weeks after the graduation fiasco. I sat at my parents' dining table, pushing roast beef around my plate. Mom was talking about the neighbor's divorce. Dad was scrolling through news headlines on his tablet, the blue light reflecting in his glasses. Ashley was texting under the table. "So," Mom said, looking at me, "did you ever send thank you cards for the graduation money you guys didn't give me any money?" I said. I kept my tone mild. "I was just stating a fact." Mom frowned. "We didn't. I could have sworn we wrote you a check. Maybe it is still on the desk. Well, remind me later. You have to stay on top of these things." "Kennedy, I will," I said. I didn't remind her. I knew there was no check. There never was. The promise of the check was the currency. The actual money was irrelevant. Later that night, back in my apartment, I was looking for a digital copy of my birth certificate. I knew my parents had scanned all our important documents years ago into the Price family cloud, a shared server drive that Dad was inordinately proud of. He used to make us upload our report cards and medical records there, claiming it was for disaster preparedness. I logged in using the password I had used since high school. The familiar folder structure appeared: taxes, house deeds, medical, Ashley, Kennedy. I clicked on Kennedy. The folder opened. Inside were my high school transcripts, a copy of my vaccination records from 1998, and a few blurry photos from a family trip to the Grand Canyon. But there was a new subfolder at the bottom. It was labeled simply docs_archive. I double-clicked it. A pop-up window appeared. Access denied. You do not have permission to view this folder. I frowned. I had administrator privileges. I had set this system up for Dad 5 years ago because he couldn't figure out the interface. I tried again. Access denied. I checked the permissions. The folder had been locked 3 days ago. The user who locked it was admin_dad. My heart did a strange little stutter. Why would he lock a subfolder in my personal archive? I picked up my phone. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. But I knew he would be awake. I dialed. "Yeah," he answered. No greeting. "Hey, Dad?" I said. "I am trying to grab a copy of my birth certificate from the cloud for a job application. It looks like you locked a folder in my drive, the archive one." There was a pause, a thick, heavy silence. "Why are you digging around in there?" he asked. His voice wasn't confused. It was sharp, defensive. "I am not digging." I said, "I am looking for my birth certificate. It is in the main folder." He said, "It is not." I said, "I checked. I think it got moved to the archive." "Can you unlock it?" "No," he said. I blinked at the wall of my living room. "What do you mean?" "No, I mean, I am doing some reorganization," he said, "cleaning up the files. I don't want you messing with the structure until I'm done. You always delete things by accident. I haven't deleted a file since I was 12. I said, "Dad, I need the certificate." "You don't need it tonight," he snapped. "Stop snooping." "Kennedy, it is unbecoming." "Snooping," I repeated. "It is a folder with my name on it. It is my server." He said, "My cloud. My rules. I will send you the certificate when I find it. Go to sleep." The line went dead. I stared at the screen. Stop snooping. He was hiding something. My father was a man who left his tax returns on the kitchen counter. He didn't care about privacy unless he was hiding a mistake or a lie. And he had locked that folder 3 days after I graduated. The next morning, while I was shelving biographies at the library, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Grandma Joyce. My father's mother was a bird-like woman with eyes like polished flint. She lived in a retirement community 40 minutes away. We weren't close. Exactly the family dynamic didn't allow for unauthorized alliances, but she had always been kind. She was the only person who didn't interrupt me when I spoke. I ducked into the break room. "Hello, Grandma Kennedy," she said. Her voice was thin but clear. "I have been waiting for you to call me. But I suppose you are busy with your new degree." I smiled, leaning against the vending machine. "I am sorry." "Grandma, it has been a hectic week. I wanted to apologize," she said. "Apologize for what?" "For missing your big day," she said. The regret in her voice sounded genuine, which was jarring. In my family, apologies were usually just accusations in disguise. I was all ready to go. I had my blue suit pressed, And then your mother called and said the date had been moved to June. I froze. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to get louder. She said what I asked. She said the university moved the ceremony to June 15th. She said, because of the facility maintenance, I was so disappointed. I put the date on my calendar. But then today I saw the neighbor's grandson posting pictures of his graduation from the same school. And I thought, well, I am confused. Kennedy. My hand gripped the phone tight enough to turn my knuckles white. They lied to her. They didn't just ignore me. They actively ensured no one else would show up either. They had intercepted the one person who would have come. The ceremony was 2 weeks ago. Grandma, I said quietly. They didn't move it. There was a long silence on the other end. I see, she said finally. Her voice was harder now, less bird-like. I see. They told me you were busy, I said. They told me everyone was busy. Kennedy, she said. Are you working today? Until 5. I said, come see me after. She said, come alone. Don't tell your father. I drove to the retirement community with the windows down, letting the wind whip my hair around my face. I felt a strange sense of vertigo. I was pulling a loose thread, and the whole sweater was starting to unravel. Grandma Joyce's cottage was small and smelled of lavender and old paper. She was waiting for me in her armchair, a cup of tea steaming on the side table. She didn't get up to hug me. She just watched me come in. Sit down, she said. I sat on the floral sofa. She reached into the magazine rack beside her chair and pulled out a large manila envelope. It was sealed with heavy tape. The front read, Kennedy in handwriting that I didn't recognize spidery. Elegant loops. Your great-aunt Sarah gave me this before she passed. Grandma said, she made me promise not to give it to your parents. She said to keep it until you were settled, until you were ready. Great-aunt Sarah. I hadn't thought about her in years. She was my grandfather's sister, a woman who had never married and had made a fortune in textile manufacturing in the 80s. She had died when I was 10. What is it? I asked. Open it, she said. I broke the seal. Inside were photocopies of legal documents. They smelled musty. I pulled them out. The top document was titled, The Sarah Price Education and Welfare Trust. I scanned the legalese. Irrevocable trust. Beneficiary Kennedy Elise Price. Upon the age of 18, my eyes caught a number. Initial corpus, $75,000. I looked up at my grandmother. $75,000. Keep reading, she said. I flipped the page. There was a statement of accounts from 12 years ago. The balance had grown. With interest, it was nearly $90,000. Then, there was a document dated 3 weeks after my 18th birthday. It was titled, Amendment of Trustee Authority. It stated that due to the beneficiary's lack of financial maturity, the control of the assets would remain with the trustees, my parents, indefinitely, with full discretion to use the funds for household maintenance and general welfare deemed beneficial to the beneficiary. It was signed by my father, and beside it was a signature that was supposed to be mine. It looked like my name, but the K was too looped. The Y didn't trail off the way mine did. I never signed this, I whispered. I know. Grandma said. I looked at her. You knew I suspected. She said, Sarah hated your father's spending habits. She called him a leaky bucket. She set this up so you would have freedom. Kennedy, so you could go to school without debt, so you could buy a house. I took out student loans. I said, my voice trembling, I have $40,000 in student loans. They told me we didn't have the money. They told me I had to apply for financial aid. Grandma Joyce nodded slowly. And they used that money to redo their kitchen, she said, and to buy that boat your father never uses, and to pay for Ashley's wedding. I felt sick, physically violent. It wasn't just that they didn't love me. It was that they had eaten me. They had consumed my future to pay for their present, and to keep the theft hidden. They had to keep me small. They had to keep me believing I was incapable, financially immature, a screw-up who needed their guidance. If I was successful, if I was independent, I might ask questions. I might ask about the money from Great-Aunt Sarah. So they needed me to be a failure, the graduation snub, the 10th grade fail, the 11th grade fail, the 12th grade fail, the 13th grade fail, the 14th grade fail, the 15th grade fail, the 16th grade fail, the 17th grade fail, the 18th grade fail, the 19th grade fail, the 20th grade fail, the 21st grade fail, the 22nd grade fail, the 23rd grade fail, the 24th grade fail, the 25th grade fail, the 26th grade fail, the 27th grade fail, the 28th grade fail, the 29th grade fail, the 30th grade fail, the 31st grade fail, the 32nd grade fail, the 33rd grade fail, the 34th grade fail, the 35th grade fail, the 36th grade fail, the 37th grade fail, the 38th grade fail, the 39th grade fail, the 40th grade fail, the 41st grade fail, the 42nd grade fail, the 43rd grade fail, the 44th grade fail, the It wasn't just pettiness, it was strategy. They wanted me to feel worthless, so I wouldn't look at the ledger. "Can I take this?" I asked, holding up the envelope. "It is yours," she said. "But be careful. Kennedy, your father is a weak man, and weak men are dangerous when they are cornered." I left her house with the envelope tucked under my shirt, against my skin. It felt like I was carrying a bomb. 3 days later, I had to attend a birthday dinner for my mother. It was at a steakhouse, expensive, loud, and dark. I sat across from Ashley. She was glowing, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "So," Ashley said, stabbing a piece of calamari, "how is the job market? Any bites?" "Not yet," I said, still looking. "Well, don't aim too high," she said breezily. "You know how the arts are. Maybe you can find something in, like, teaching preschool? They always need bodies. I have a master's degree." I said, "Oh, I know." She laughed. "I am just saying, you have to be realistic. Mom and Dad can't bail you out forever." I looked at my parents. Dad was pouring wine. Mom was beaming at Ashley. "Bail me out," I said. "When have they bailed me out?" Ashley rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on." "Kennedy, who do you think paid for your car insurance in college? Who paid for your phone until you were 25? You are practically the family charity case. I am glad you finally got your little diploma. Really. But let's not pretend you are carrying your own weight." The table went quiet. My father looked at me, waiting for me to snap, waiting for me to get emotional so he could roll his eyes and say, "There she goes again." I touched the purse at my feet. The envelope was inside. The family charity case. They had stolen $90,000 from me, and they had the audacity to call me a charity case. They were driving cars bought with my freedom. They were eating steak paid for with my security. I looked at Ashley. I looked at her perfect teeth and her empty eyes. "You are right," I said. Ashley blinked. "What?" "You are right," I said. "I need to be more realistic. Thanks for the advice." "Ash." My mother looked disappointed. She had wanted a fight. She had wanted the drama. But I denied them the fuel. I cut my steak. I chewed. I swallowed. Inside, I was burning. But it was a cold fire, a clean fire. The next day at the library, I dropped a stack of heavy reference books. They hit the floor with a sound like a gunshot. I immediately dropped to my knees. Scrambling to pick them up, I was apologizing to the empty air. "I am sorry. I am sorry. I am so stupid. Hey, it is okay." I looked up. It was Elena, a new hire in the archives department. She was young, maybe 25, with bright green braids and a septum piercing. She was crouching next to me. "It is just books," she said. "They are not made of glass." I was shaking. I realized I was terrifyingly close to tears. "I am sorry," I whispered. I am clumsy." "Kennedy," she said. She put a hand on my shoulder. She didn't pull away when I flinched. "You are literally the hardest worker in this building. You never take a lunch break. You never leave early. You treat these books like they are holy artifacts. I said, "I have to earn my keep." She looked at me. Her head tilted to the side. "No," she said firmly. You don't have to earn basic kindness. Kennedy, you don't have to pay rent for existing." I stared at her. The words bounced around in my head. "You don't have to pay rent for existing." For 34 years, I had been paying rent. I had been paying in silence, in compliance, in swallowing my pride, in accepting the scraps they threw me. And it turned out, I had been paying in actual cash, too. I stood up. I helped her stack the books. "Thank you." "Elena," I said. "Any time," she said. She smiled, and it was a real smile. No agenda, no trap. I went back to my desk. I opened a browser window. I searched for the Department of Vital Records in a state halfway across the country. I searched for the legal requirements for a name change. I didn't want to sue them. Not yet. Suing them meant engaging with them. It meant years of depositions, of my mother crying in court, of my sister calling me a gold digger on Facebook. It meant staying in their orbit, I didn't want their money. I wanted my life. I wanted to be someone they couldn't find, someone they couldn't mock, someone they couldn't steal from. I downloaded the forms, petition for change of name, reason for change. I hovered over the box. I could write fraud. I could write abuse. I could write to escape a family of vampires. I typed personal preference. I printed the forms. They were warm in my hands. I wasn't just leaving a town. I was leaving a history. Kennedy Price was the girl who waited for phone calls that never came. Kennedy Price was the girl who apologized for being robbed. Kennedy Price was the charity case. Kennedy Price was going to cease to exist. I took the forms, my checkbook for the new account, and the envelope from Grandma Joyce. I walked out of the library at 5 o'clock. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. I got in my car and drove toward the post office to mail the first of the applications. I didn't look back at the skyline of the city where I was born. I looked at the road ahead. It was dark, and it was empty, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, and the room was mostly empty. There were no dramatic speeches, no tearful family members in the gallery, no cinematic swelling of music. It was just me, a clerk typing rhythmically on a silent keyboard, and a judge who looked like he wanted to be on his lunch break. "State your name for the record," the judge said, not looking up from his file. "Kennedy Elise Price," I said, "and you are petitioning to change your legal name to—" He squinted at the paper. "Nora Jane Vance. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Are you changing your name to avoid debts, creditors, or criminal liability?" he asked, reciting the script he must have said 1,000 times. "No, Your Honor." "Are you changing your name to defraud any person or entity?" "No, Your Honor." He stamped the paper. The sound was loud in the quiet room. A heavy, final thud. "Granted," he said. "Next." It took 5 minutes to erase 34 years of history. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright, blinding sunlight. I stood on the concrete steps and took a breath. The air didn't taste different. The traffic noise hadn't changed. But I felt lighter, as if I had put down a backpack filled with stones that I'd been carrying since I was a child. Kennedy Price was the girl who wasn't worth waiting for. Kennedy Price was the girl whose graduation was an inconvenience. Kennedy Price was the family charity case. Nora Vance was a stranger, and strangers were safe. I didn't post a status update. I didn't send a mass email explaining my journey of self-discovery. I simply got in my car, drove to the Social Security office to file the paperwork, and then went to the Department of Motor Vehicles. By 4 in the afternoon, I had a temporary paper license with the name Nora Vance printed on it. 2 days later, I left. I had chosen a town called Oakhaven, located in a state 700 miles away. It was a fictional place in my mind until I saw it on a map mid-sized. Boring. Surrounded by pine trees and gray skies. It was perfect. It was a place where people went to live, not to visit. I rented a small apartment on the second floor of a brick building. It had hardwood floors that creaked and a view of a parking lot. But it was mine. I opened a bank account at a local credit union under my new name. I transferred the money I had scraped together, the textbook sales, the meager savings, the last paycheck from the library. I got a job within 3 weeks. My resume, stripped of the Price surname and updated with my new legal identity, landed me a position as a records coordinator at a community college. It was quiet work. It involved organizing transcripts, verifying enrollment data, and ensuring that files were where they were supposed to be. It was the opposite of my family's chaos. It was ordered. It was logical. I built a routine. Routine was my armor, every morning. I woke up at 6. I drank black coffee. I walked to work. I organized files. I ate a turkey sandwich at noon. I walked home. On Friday nights, I went to a diner called the Silver Spoon and ordered a burger and fries. On Saturday mornings, I walked the trail by the river, watching the water move gray and fast over the rocks. I was boring. I was solitary. I was safe. But the ghost of Kennedy Price didn't vanish quietly. My phone, which I had kept active only to monitor them until I could fully transition to a new number, began to vibrate with increasing desperation. At first, the texts were casual. "Hey, haven't heard from you. Are you coming for Sunday dinner? Dad is grilling. Kennedy, are you okay? You didn't like my post about the new boat." Then, they turned irritated. "It is extremely rude to ignore your mother. Kennedy, we know you are seeing these. The read receipts are on. Grow up." I didn't reply. I watched the notifications roll in like storm waves crashing against a lighthouse. I was the lighthouse. I stood still, and the water broke around me. Then, the pleading started. "Kennedy, please call. We are worried. Did we do something? You are being very dramatic." Finally, 3 months after I left, "I made a mistake," I answered. It was a Tuesday evening. I was tired. The phone rang, displaying Mom. My thumb slipped. Or maybe my resolve did. I swiped to answer. "Hello," I said. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Kennedy, my mother cried." Her voice was shrill, vibrating with that familiar mix of victimhood and aggression. "Where have you been? Do you have any idea what you have put us through?" "I am fine," I said. "Fine. You are fine. We have been calling you for weeks. Your father was about to call the police." "You weren't going to call the police," I said calmly, "because then you would have to explain why you don't know where your 34-year-old daughter lives. Don't you dare turn this around on us." She snapped. "We have neighbors asking questions. Kennedy, Mrs. Gable asked me yesterday why you weren't at the 4th of July barbecue. Do you know how humiliating that is, to have to make up excuses for your own daughter? And there it was. It wasn't, 'I miss you.' It wasn't, 'I am sorry.' It was, 'You are embarrassing us.' My absence wasn't a loss to them. It was a public relations problem. I was a prop that had gone missing from their stage set, and the audience was starting to notice. 'I am sorry I embarrassed you,' I said. 'It won't happen again.' 'Good,' she said, her voice dropping to a smug, satisfied register. 'Now, when are you coming home? Ashley is pregnant, and we are planning the gender reveal for next month. We need you to handle the invitations because you are better at that computer stuff.' 'I am not coming home.' 'Mom, what I am not coming to the gender reveal. I am not doing the invitations. I am not coming to Sunday dinner.' 'Stop being ridiculous,' she said. 'You have made your point. You punished us. Now come back to reality. This is reality,' I said. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with adrenaline. I pulled the SIM card out of the phone. I snapped it in half. I dropped the pieces into the trash can. The next day, I bought a burner phone and a prepaid plan. I texted one person, "It is Kennedy. I am safe. I have a new number. Please don't give it to them." I sent it to Grandma Joyce. 10 minutes later, a reply came. "I understand. I love you. I will not say a word." That was it. The only thread I kept attached to the burning house I had fled. I thought the silence would bring peace, and it did. For a while. But silence in my family was never empty. It was just a space where they built new weapons. 6 months after I arrived in Oakhaven, I got an email on my old personal account, the one I checked once a week at the public library. Never from my home internet. It was from Mrs. Gable, the neighbor my mother had mentioned. Mrs. Gable was a kindly, gossip-hungry woman who had known me since I was 5. Subject: thinking of you, dear Kennedy. I bumped into your mother at the grocery store today. I was so sorry to hear about your breakdown. I had no idea you were struggling so much with your mental health. I just wanted to send my love and say that there is no shame in taking time away to heal. Your mother said you are in a facility that is very good. I hope you find your balance. Dear, we are all praying for you." I stared at the screen. The neon lights of the library hummed overhead. A breakdown. A facility. They hadn't just explained my absence. They had pathologized it. They couldn't admit I had left them because that would imply they were leavable. So they had to invent a narrative where I was unstable. Crazy. Broken. If I was having a breakdown, then anything I said about them could be dismissed as the ravings of a sick woman. If I ever told anyone about the graduation, or the money, or the emotional abuse, they would just shake their heads and say, "Oh, poor Kennedy. She has been unwell for a long time. It was brilliant. It was evil. And it was exactly what I should have expected." I didn't reply to Mrs. Gable. I deleted the email, but the email triggered something in me. It woke up the part of my brain that dealt in facts, not feelings. If they were willing to lie about my location and my health to neighbors, what else were they lying about? Grandma Joyce's envelope was sitting in my fireproof box under my bed. I thought about the trust fund. I thought about the locked cloud folder. I needed to stop hiding and start looking. I went to my office at the college after hours. The building was empty, the hallways dark and quiet. I sat at my desk and logged into the secure request portal for my graduate university. I requested a full transcript and a financial aid audit of my student account. Then, I went to the annual credit report site. I typed in my social security number. I typed in my old name, Kennedy Price. The report generated a long scrolling list of data points. I scanned it. Student loans. Check. Car loan paid off. Credit card 1. Good standing. Credit card 2. Good standing. Then I stopped. There was an account listed under closed accounts. Lender First National Bank. Type revolving credit. Date opened August 12, 2011. Date closed September 4, 2015. Status closed by consumer. High balance. $14,000. I stared at the dates. August 2011. I was 21 years old. I was a junior in college. I had never banked with First National. I had never had a credit card with a limit that high. In college, my limit was $500, just enough for emergencies. $14,000. I looked at the payment history. Minimum payments made every month for 4 years. Then, one lump sum payment to clear the balance in 2015. 2015, the year I graduated from college, the year my grandmother said the trust fund amendment was suspiciously convenient. I felt a cold sweat prickle on the back of my neck. Someone had opened a credit card in my name, run up $14,000 of debt, and then paid it off. Who pays off a fraudulent credit card? Identity thieves don't pay bills. They max it out and run. But a parent who needed liquidity, a parent who used their child's clean credit score to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford, then used the child's own trust fund to pay it back before anyone noticed. I scrolled down to the inquiry section. There was a hard inquiry dated 3 weeks ago. Inquirer P. I. Services, LLC, permissible purpose. Skip tracing / asset location. My breath hitched. Skip tracing, that was the term debt collectors used to find people who had vanished. Private investigators used it too. They weren't just calling my phone, they were hunting me. I printed the report. The pages were warm coming out of the printer. The next morning, I took a half day off work. I found a legal aid clinic in the next town over. A 40-minute drive. I didn't want to use anyone in Oakhaven. The attorney was a woman named Ms. Cheng. She looked tired, her desk piled high with case files. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. I told her about the name change. I told her about the trust documents. I told her about the credit report. She looked at the papers I had spread out on her desk. "You have a new identity." She said, "That is good. It gives you a shield. But they are looking for me." I said, I pointed to the inquiry. "PI. Services. Yes," she said. "And if they are paying a skip tracer, they are serious. People don't usually spend money to find an estranged daughter just to say I love you. They do it because they want something. The trust." I said, "Likely." She agreed. "If there are assets in your name, or if they need your signature to move assets they have already accessed. Your absence is a liability. It freezes the money." She leaned forward. "Here is my advice. Nora, do not confront them. Do not call them and scream about the credit card. Do not ask about the trust." Why not, I asked. "I want them to know I know, because right now, you are a ghost," she said. "That is your power. The moment you engage, you become a person again. A person they can manipulate. A a person they can sue, a person they can gaslight. So what do I do? You document, she said. You build a fortress of paper. You get certified copies of everything. You write down dates, times, conversations. You prepare for a war, but you let them fire the first shot. If you accuse them of fraud now, without the full picture, they will claim it was a mistake, or that you authorized it and forgot. They are already telling people you are mentally unstable. That is their defense strategy preloaded. I nodded. I felt a chill go through me. The breakdown narrative wasn't just gossip, it was a legal insulation. If I sued them, they would say, "Poor Kennedy. She imagines things. Keep everything in writing." "Ms.," Chung said, "and do not sign anything, not a birthday card, not a receipt that they might see. Nothing." I went home. I stopped at an office supply store and bought a large corkboard and a box of pushpins. I hung the board on the wall of my bedroom, inside the closet where no one would see it. I started pinning. Pin 1 graduation day, the text messages, the brunch photo, the lie about Aunt Linda. Pin 2, the trust fund, the document Grandma gave me, the forged signature on the amendment. Pin 3, the credit report, the mysterious $14,000 debt. Pin 4, the breakdown story, the email from Mrs. Gable. Pin 5, the inquiry, PI, services. I stepped back. It looked like a conspiracy theory. It looked like the wall of a crazy person, but as I stared at it, I saw the lines connecting the dots. They forgot my graduation because they were busy moving money, or maybe because they were meeting with someone about the trust. The date of the graduation, May 18th, coincided with a fiscal quarter ending. They denied me access to the cloud because the evidence of the credit card statements might have been in the archive. They called me a charity case to keep my self-esteem so low that I wouldn't dare look at my own financial independence. It was a machine built of guilt and lies, designed to extract value from me while convinced me I was the burden. I felt a surge of rage, hot and blinding, but I pushed it down. Rage made you sloppy. Rage made you call your mother and scream. I needed to be cold. I needed to be Nora Vance, the records coordinator. I spent the next 2 months living in a state of high alert. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every time a car drove slowly past my apartment, I watched it through the blinds, but nothing happened. The snow began to fall in Oakhaven, covering the gray world in white. The silence returned. Maybe they gave up, I told myself. Maybe the PEI couldn't find me. I had been careful. No social media. No forwarded mail. I started to relax. I made a friend at work, a woman named Sarah who taught English. We went to movies. I laughed. I bought a winter coat that wasn't on sale. Just because I liked the color, I was beginning to feel human. Then came the Tuesday in November. I walked home from work, the snow crunching under my boots. I checked my mailbox in the lobby. Bill, flyer, bill, and a stiff, white envelope. It was certified mail. I stared at the address window. Kennedy Price, care of occupant, 402 Pine Street, apartment 2B, Oakhaven, Washington. They had my old name, and they had my new address. I felt the blood drain from my face. The hallway spun. How I had been so careful. I had used the P.O. box for everything. Then I realized, the utility bill. I had put the electric bill in my new name, Nora Vance, but the credit check for the utility company might have linked to my social security number, which was still tied to Kennedy Price in the deep databanks of the credit bureaus. The PI had seen the link. Kennedy Price creates alias Nora Vance. Nora Vance lives at 402 Pine Street. I stood in the cold lobby, holding the letter. It felt heavy, like it contained lead. I didn't open it right there. I carried it upstairs. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I put the chain across. I sat at my kitchen table and put the letter in the center. The return address was a law firm, Blackwood Associates. I used a knife to slit the top. I pulled out a single sheet of heavy cream-colored paper. Dear Ms. Price, we represent the trustees of the Sarah Price Education and Welfare Trust. We have been trying to reach you regarding an urgent matter concerning the disposition of assets. Your signature is required to verify your identity and authorize a necessary transfer of funds. Please contact our office immediately at the number below. Failure to respond may result in legal action to compel your cooperation. Sincerely, Marcus Blackwood, Esquire. I read it twice. Compel your cooperation. They weren't asking anymore. They were demanding, and they knew where I was. The ghost of Kennedy Price hadn't just haunted me, it had found me. I looked at the closet door where my evidence board hung in the dark. I wasn't safe. I never had been. But as I looked at the letter, I realized something else. They were desperate. You don't threaten to sue someone for a signature unless you really need that signature. They needed me. And for the first time in my life, that meant I had the leverage. I picked up the letter. I didn't cry. I didn't call my mother. I walked to the closet, opened the door, and pinned the letter to the center of the board. Pin 6. The threat. I am Nora Vance. I whispered to the empty room. But Kennedy Price had one last fight to finish. The letter lay on my kitchen table like a coiled snake. It was heavy, textured bond paper, the kind that cost more per sheet than I used to spend on lunch. The letterhead was embossed Blackwood Associates, attorneys at law. I had spent the last 24 hours staring at it, dissecting every word, every comma. R.E. Verification of beneficiary status and ratification of trust. Acts. Dear Ms. Price, we represent Price Family Holdings, LLC, and the trustees of the Sarah Price Education and Welfare Trust, in preparation for the scheduled dissolution of the trust and subsequent asset transfer. It is required that all beneficiaries confirm their identity and acknowledge receipt of prior disbursements. Please sign the enclosed affidavit of identity and release of liability. Failure to execute these documents within 10 business days will compel the trustees to seek judicial relief to cure the defect in title. I wasn't a lawyer, but I had spent enough time in libraries to know how to read between the lines. Cure the defect. I was the defect. My absence wasn't just an emotional annoyance anymore. It was a structural failure in their financial architecture. They were trying to move something money, land, stocks, and the computer system, or the bank, or the title company, had stopped them. They had hit a red light that said, "Where is Kennedy Price?" They needed me. I took a sip of cold coffee. A grim satisfaction settled in my chest. For years, I had been the needy one. I had been the one asking for affection, asking for time, asking for the truth. Now, the dynamic had inverted. They were the ones reaching out. They were the ones sweating, but the satisfaction was thin. Underneath it was the cold reality of the threat. Judicial relief. That meant court. That meant dragging me out of the shadows of Oakhaven and back into the harsh fluorescent light of being Kennedy Price. I needed help, real help, not the overworked legal aid attorney who had told me to document everything. I needed a shark. I found Elias Thorne 3 towns over. His office was in a strip mall between a chiropractor and a vape shop, but the reviews online said he was aggressive and unpleasant. That sounded perfect. I walked into his office at 9 in the morning. Thorne was a small man with a buzz cut and eyes that looked like they had seen every possible way a human being could lie. He read the letter. He didn't look up for 3 minutes. Then he tossed it onto his desk. "They are stuck," he said. His voice was gravelly. "Stuck how I asked." He leaned back in his chair. "Someone wants to buy something, or they want to close this trust and take the cash. But because you are a named beneficiary, the bank or the buyer wants your signature. They want you to say, 'Yes, I am Kennedy Price, and I am happy with how everything has been handled.' And if I don't sign," Thorne smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "If you don't sign, the money stays frozen. They can't sell. They can't cash out. You are the sand in the gears." He tapped the document titled, "Release of Liability." "This is the dangerous part," he said. "They don't just want you to say you are who you say you are. They want you to retroactively approve everything they have done for the last 15 years. Everything, Thorne said. If they spent $50,000 on a boat and called it educational expenses, and you sign this, You are agreeing that it was a valid expense. You are cleaning their paper trail. You are handing them a get-out-of-jail-free card for every dollar they stole. I felt a flash of heat. The credit card debt. The $14,000. So they committed fraud. I said, and now they need me to help them cover it up. Exactly, Thorne said. And they are betting that you are scared enough, or broke enough, or eager enough for a reconciliation, that you will just sign it to make the lawyers go away. He looked at me. Are you broke? I make enough. I said, Are you scared? I hesitated. Yes. But I am angry. Too. Good, Thorne said. Angry is useful. Scared gets you run over. He pulled a yellow legal pad toward him. Here is what we are going to do. He said, We are not going to sign. We are going to demand a full accounting. If they want you to release them from liability, they have to show you exactly what that liability is. We want bank statements. We want receipts. We want the trust instrument and every amendment ever filed. They won't give that to us. I said, My father locked me out of the cloud. He hides everything. Then we make them refuse. Thorne said, We make them say no on the record. Because when a trustee refuses to show the beneficiary where the money went, a judge starts to get very suspicious. He scribbled on the pad. I will draft the demand letter, he said. But I need to warn you. When they get this, they are going to escalate. They are used to you being the doormat. When the doormat stands up and grows teeth, people tend to freak out. Let them freak out, I said. I drove back to Oak Haven feeling a strange buzzing in my veins. It was the feeling of a weapon being loaded. 2 days later, my burner phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was from home. I stared at it. I was sitting in my office at the college, surrounded by stacks of transcripts. The phone buzzed and buzzed. If I answered, I was breaking the silence. If I didn't, they would keep calling. I picked it up. Hello, Kennedy. It was Ashley. Her voice was breathless, high-pitched, the voice she used when she wanted to borrow clothes or convince me to drive her to the airport. Who is this? I asked. I knew, but I wanted her to say it. It is Ashley. Silly God. Getting this number was a nightmare. I had to beg Grandma for it, and she barely gave it up. She is getting so senile. Grandma isn't senile, I said. She is the sharpest person in the family. Ashley laughed. A nervous, tinkling sound. Whatever. Listen, we miss you so much. It has been crazy here. Mom is, well, she is sick with worry. Literally sick. Her blood pressure is through the roof. She had to wear a monitor last week. I said nothing. I looked at the snow falling outside my window. Kennedy. Are you there? I am here. Look, I know you are going through a phase or whatever, she said, and we respect that. We totally respect your space. But you need to help us out with this paperwork thing. It is causing Dad so much stress. The paperwork thing, the asset transfer. It is just a signature, Ashley said. Just a formality. Dad said he sent you a letter. I got a letter from a law firm. I said, right, Blackwood. They are sharks, aren't they? Dad hates them. But you know, business is business. Just sign the affidavit and the release, and send it back. Then we can all move on. Mom just wants to know you are okay. I am not signing it. Ashley. The silence on the line was instant and total. The bubbly veneer evaporated. What do you mean? You are not signing it. I mean, I am not signing a release of liability without seeing the accounts. I said, I hired a lawyer. He sent a demand letter this morning. A lawyer? Ashley's voice dropped. It was suddenly cold, hard. The voice of the sister who had joked about me being a charity case. You hired a lawyer? Are you insane? I'm just being careful, I said. You are being selfish, she shouted. The volume made me pull the phone away from my ear. You disappear for 6 months. You make Mom cry every night, and now you are suing us. I am not suing you. I am asking for records. It is the same thing. Do you know what this does? You are freezing the sale. Dad has a buyer for the commercial property on 4th Street. And if you don't sign, the deal falls through. Do you want to ruin us? Is that it? You want to punish us because you didn't get enough attention at your little graduation? The mention of the graduation stung, but it was an old pain. It didn't bleed anymore. If everything is above board, I said, then showing me the records shouldn't be a problem. Ashley made a sound of disgust. You are unbelievable. You have always been like this. Jealous. Petty. You think you are so smart with your new name and your little secret life, but you are just a sad, lonely girl. I am not lonely. I said, just sign the papers, Kennedy, or I swear to God, we will handle it without you. And you won't like how we do it. Is that a threat? It is a promise. She hung up. I sat in my office, listening to the dial tone. My hands were trembling. But not from fear. I was trembling because for the first time, I had said no to them. And the world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. She had confirmed everything Thorne had said. They were selling property. They were desperate, and my refusal was costing them money. That night, I called Grandma Joyce. I used the prepaid phone, sitting in my bathtub with the shower curtain drawn, as if the plastic liner could block out the rest of the world. Grandma Nora, she said. She used my new name. It felt like a blessing. Ashley called me. I said, she said you gave her the number. She stole it from my address book. Grandma said, her voice was tight with anger. She came over to bring me muffins. I went to the kitchen to make tea, and she went through my purse. I caught her writing it down. I threw her out. Kennedy, I told her not to come back. I am sorry. I said, I am so sorry you are in the middle of this. Don't you apologize, she said. I have been waiting for someone to stand up to them for 30 years. Your grandfather was too weak. I was too tired. But you are doing it. I told her about the letter, about the trust. Grandma sighed. It was a long, rattling sound. You need to know something, she said, about Sarah. Great Aunt Sarah. Yes, your parents. They paint a picture that we were all one big happy family. But Sarah couldn't stand your father. She called him a hollow man. She said he would sell his own shadow if he could find a buyer. I waited. When she set up that trust, Grandma said, she specifically wrote a clause. I remember because she read it to me at her kitchen table. She wanted a protection from undue influence. She was terrified that your parents would pressure you into signing the money over to them before you were old enough to understand. That is exactly what they did. I said, the amendment, the one I supposedly signed at 18. Yes, Grandma said. But Sarah was smart. She might have put in a failsafe. She told me once that if the trust was ever altered, a duplicate copy of the original terms had to be filed with a separate executor. Not your father. Who I asked. Who was the executor, I don't know, she said. But Sarah used a lawyer in the city, a man named Cohen, old Mister. Cohen is dead now, but his firm might still have the files. Cohen. I repeated, I will find them. Kennedy, she said, be careful. They are telling people you are a danger to yourself. Your mother told the pastor that you were off your medication. You were never on medication, I know. I said, they are building a case. They are building a cage, she said. Don't let them put you in it. I hung up. I lay in the empty tub for a long time, a failsafe, a separate executor. If I could find the original trust documents, I could prove the amendment was a forgery. I could prove the fraud. I got out of the tub and went to my closet. I dug through the box of old things I had brought with me, a few yearbooks, a photo album, and an old external hard drive I had used in college for backing up my laptop. I plugged it into my computer. The drive whirred and clicked, struggling to spin up. I navigated through the folders. College essays, photos, music. There was a folder labeled iPhone Backup 2018. I opened it. It was a mess of metadata and unreadable files. But there was a subfolder for voice memos. I clicked it. Dozens of files named with dates and times. I sorted by date. I found one from 4 years ago. August 2021. I put on my headphones. I clicked play. The sound of static. Then, the sound of a car door slamming. It was an accidental recording. I must have hit the button in my pocket. I heard my own voice, younger, higher. Dad, I just don't understand why the financial aid office said I had assets. They said the trust reported income. Then, my father's voice. It was low, vibrating with that suppressed rage that always terrified me. I told you to stop asking about that money, Kennedy. But if I have income, I can't get the loan. I need to know. You don't need to know anything, he shouted. The audio peaked, distorting into a crackle. That money is complicated. It is tied up in investments. If you go poking around, asking the IRS questions, you are going to trigger an audit. Do you want that? Do you want to be responsible for ruining this family? No. Then shut up about it. Sign the loan papers. We will handle the payments. Just stop being so greedy. The recording ended. I sat in the silence of my apartment, greedy. He had projected his own sin onto me. He was the one stealing. He was the one afraid of the audit. But he had made me feel like the criminal for asking a simple question. I had minimized it at the time. I remembered that car ride. I remembered crying afterwards, feeling guilty that I had stressed him out. I had buried the memory because I wanted peace. I wanted to be the good daughter. But listening to it now, with the distance of 700 miles and a new name, I heard the truth. I heard fear. He was terrified. He was terrified because he knew that if I ever looked at the ledger, he was finished. I saved the file. I renamed it evidence_voice_dad_threat. I emailed it to Thorne. The next morning, Thorne called me. I sent the demand letter. He said, they received it yesterday, and then they responded this morning, or their lawyer did. What did they say? Thorne let out a dry chuckle. They sent us a stack of paper an inch thick. Most of it is garbage. Heavily redacted tax returns from 10 years ago. A list of expenses that includes things like consulting fees paid to your mother. Consulting fees, I asked. My mother hasn't worked since 1990. Exactly. It is a joke. It is bad faith. They are trying to bury us in paper while giving us nothing. But here is the interesting part. They refused to provide the original trust instrument. They claimed it was lost in a flood 3 years ago. A flood, I said. We live on a hill. Our basement has never flooded in history. I know that. And you know that. Thorne said. But they are putting it on the record. They are claiming the original documents are gone, so we have to rely on the amended version they conveniently have on hand, the one with the forged signature. Right. I told him about Grandma Joyce, about the lawyer named Cohen. Find that firm. Thorne said. If we can produce a certified copy of the original trust that contradicts their version, we have them on fraud. That is criminal. Nora, that is jail time. I spent the lunch hour searching legal directories. Cohen, Weiss-Miller, the firm had dissolved in 2010, but the partners had gone to other firms. I found an obituary for Arthur Cohen. He had died in 2012, but his files, lawyers have to keep files for decades. I found a successor firm, Miller Associates. I called them. I explained who I was, Nora Vance. Formerly Kennedy Price. I gave them the dates. The receptionist was skeptical. We have thousands of boxes in off-site storage, she said. It would take weeks to look. I will pay for the search. I said, please, it is a matter of fraud. She took my number. She didn't promise anything. 3 days later, I was at work when the front desk called my extension. Nora. There is a man here to see you. I froze. A man. He says he has a delivery. I walked to the lobby. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. A man in a cheap windbreaker was standing by the reception desk. He held a large manila envelope. Nora Vance, he asked. Yes. He thrust the envelope at me. You are served, he said. He turned and walked out. I looked at the envelope. It wasn't a letter this time. It was a court filing. State of home state, county of home county, petition for declaratory judgment and compelling of appearance, Plaintiff's Price Family Holdings, LLC, Defendant Kennedy. Elise Price, also known as Nora Vance. I opened it. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost ripped the paper. They weren't just suing me for the signature. They were claiming that I was mentally incapacitated. The plaintiffs alleged that the defendant, Kennedy Price, has suffered a mental health crisis, evidenced by her sudden disappearance, adoption of a fictitious identity, and refusal to communicate with family members. The plaintiffs seek an emergency order appointing James Price father as temporary conservator over the defendant's financial interests in the trust. In order to facilitate necessary business transactions, the court orders the defendant to appear in person on date to show cause why this conservatorship should not be granted. I leaned against the wall. The lobby spun. They were doing it. They were weaponizing the breakdown narrative. They were telling a judge that I was crazy because I had changed my name. They were using my escape as proof of my instability. If they got a conservatorship, they wouldn't need my signature. My father could sign for me. He could sign the release. He could sign the transfer. He could erase the fraud. And he would own me. Legally. Again. I felt a wave of nausea. It was so smart. It was so cruel. I looked at the date. The hearing was in 10 days. I had to go back. I had to walk into a courtroom, in the town where I was born, and prove that I was sane. I had to face them. I dialed Thorne. They filed. I said, "They are trying to get a conservatorship." "I saw it," Thorne said. His voice was grim. "They are playing dirty. Nora, this is the nuclear option. Can we stop it? We can fight it," he said. "But you have to show up. You have to stand in front of a judge and look rational. You have to explain why you ran away without sounding paranoid. I can do that." I said, "Can you?" Thorne asked. "They are going to have your mother crying in the front row. They are going to have your sister looking concerned. They are going to have affidavits from neighbors saying you were acting strange. They are going to try to break you on the stand." I looked at the paperwork in my hand. I looked at the name Kennedy Price. I remembered the graduation. I remembered the empty seat. I remembered the brunch photo. I remembered the voice on the recording. "Stop being so greedy. I am not the same person I was." I said, "I hope not," Thorne said, "because the person you were would lose this case." I hung up. I walked back to my office. I took the pushpin out of the board where I had pinned the threat letter. I pinned up the summons. Pin 7, the war. I wasn't running anymore. I was done hiding in Oakhaven. I was done being safe. They wanted Kennedy Price fine. They were going to get her. The sign on the highway said, "Welcome to Mapleton." Population 42,000. It was a green metal rectangle, bullet-riddled and faded by the sun. Standing like a sentry at the edge of the territory I had sworn never to enter again. I drove my rental car, a silver sedan that smelled of industrial lemon cleaner, past the exit for my parents' neighborhood. My hands were gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white ridges. The old panic was there, a cold, fluttering bird trapped in my ribcage. But it was different this time. Before, the panic had been the fear of a child waiting to be scolded. Now, it was the adrenaline of a soldier crossing enemy lines. I wasn't Kennedy Price, the daughter who begged for scraps of affection. I was Nora Vance. I had a driver's license in my purse that said so. I had a lawyer named Elias Thorne who was currently filing motions in the county clerk's office. I had a binder in the passenger seat filled with certified bank records. I checked into a budget hotel on the south side of town, near the interstate. It was the kind of place my parents would never set foot in, which made it the safest place in the city. I signed the guest register with my new name, my hand steady. Room 214. I unpacked my suit charcoal gray. Sharp, professional. I hung it in the open closet. It looked like armor. My phone buzzed. It was Grandma Joyce. "I am at the park. The bench by the ducks." I changed into jeans and a sweater. I put on sunglasses. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a spy movie. But I knew my family. If they saw me before the hearing, before I was ready, they would swarm. They would create a scene, force a confrontation, and try to make me crack. I drove to the park. The weeping willows were exactly as I remembered them, dragging their leaves in the brown water of the pond. Grandma Joyce was sitting on a bench, feeding bread to a pair of mallards. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her coat seemed to swallow her. I sat down next to her. I didn't hug her. We weren't a hugging family, even the good ones. "Grandma," I said. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the ducks. "You cut your hair," she said. "I did. It looks good," she said. "Stronger?" She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a metal biscuit tin. It was old, the floral pattern scratched away at the corners. "Here," she said. "What is this?" "The receipts," she said. "And the letters. And the notebook." She finally turned to look at me. Her eyes were watery, blue and fierce. "I started keeping a log when you were 7, she said. "The year they missed your piano recital because your mother said she had a migraine. I saw her at the tennis club 2 hours later. She looked fine. She was laughing. I felt a lump form in my throat. You knew I suspected." She corrected. "I thought maybe I was being harsh. Maybe I was just an old woman judging her daughter-in-law. But then it happened again, and again. The birthday party they canceled because of the plumbing emergency that never required a plumber. The time they left you at camp for an extra day because they mixed up the dates." She tapped the tin. "It is all in there. Kennedy, dates, times, observations. I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I wasn't going crazy. I wanted to make sure that when you grew up, if you ever asked me, I could tell you the truth. They are trying to say I am crazy. Grandma, they filed for a conservatorship. I know," she said. Her voice trembled with anger. "I saw the papers. Your father showed them to me. He acted like he was doing you a favor. He said, 'Mom, we have to save her from herself. He is trying to save himself.'" I said. She nodded. She pressed the tin into my hands. "There are letters in there from Sarah, too. The great-aunt you barely knew. She wrote to me about the trust. She wrote about her fears. She wrote that she didn't trust your father with a nickel." "Thank you," I whispered. "Go," she said. "Don't stay here. If they see us together, they will say I am enabling your delusion." I stood up. I wanted to tell her I loved her, but the words felt too small. "I will fix this," I said. "I know you will," she said. "You are the only one who can—" I walked back to my car with the tin pressed against my chest. I sat in the driver's seat and opened it. Inside, smelling of lavender and rust, was a small spiral notebook. I opened to a random page. October 14, 2006, Kennedy Suite 16. Parents left at 6 p.m. for a business dinner. Left Kennedy with a frozen pizza. Returned at midnight smelling of wine. Told Kennedy she was too old for parties anyway. I remembered that night. I remembered eating the pizza alone, watching a talk show, telling myself it was mature to be independent. Grandma had seen it. She had witnessed it. I wasn't crazy. I had never been crazy. The next morning, I made a tactical error. I needed coffee. The hotel coffee tasted like battery acid, so I drove to a cafe downtown. It was a place I used to study in during college, a place I associated with peace. I was standing at the counter, waiting for my latte. When the bell above the door chimed, I felt the atmospheric pressure in the room change before I even turned around. It was a specific kind of electricity, a static charge that pricked the hairs on my arms. "Kennedy." The voice was loud, theatrical. I turned slowly. My mother was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a beige trench coat and a silk scarf. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She looked like a woman who had just stepped out of a magazine ad for successful, grieving mothers. She dropped her purse. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. "Oh my God," she gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Kennedy." Every head in the cafe turned. People stopped typing on their laptops. The barista stopped steaming milk. I stood frozen. I was trapped in her play. She rushed forward. She didn't walk. She ran. Her arms open. She collided with me, wrapping her arms around my rigid body. She smelled of expensive perfume and hairspray. "You are alive," she sobbed. She was crying instantly, loud, heaving sobs that shook her shoulders. "Oh, thank God. We were so worried. We thought you were dead. Please let go of me," I said. My voice was low, tight. She didn't let go. She squeezed tighter, pinning my arms to my sides. She was performing for the audience. She was showing the room, showing the world, how much she loved her lost, broken child. "Look at you," she wailed, pulling back to cup my face. "You are so thin. You look terrible. Oh, My poor baby. Come home. The car is right outside. We can go home right now. I am not going home. I said. I stepped back, breaking her hold. I am here for the hearing. Her face changed. For a split second, the mask slipped. The grief vanished, replaced by a flash of cold, reptilian annoyance, but she recovered instantly. The hearing, she said, wiping her eyes with a tissue she produced from her sleeve. Oh, honey, we don't need a hearing. We can settle this. We just want to help you. You are not well. Look at you. Running away. Changing your name. That is not a sane thing to do. Kennedy, I am perfectly sane. I said, and my name is Nora. She flinched as if I had slapped her. Don't say that, she whispered loudly. Don't say that name. You are Kennedy Price. You are our daughter. I grabbed my coffee from the counter. I turned to leave. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Her nails dug into my sweater. She leaned in close. Her face was inches from mine, to the room. It looked like a mother pleading with a difficult child. But when she spoke, her voice was a hiss, a razor blade wrapped in silk. You always loved punishing us, she whispered. You selfish little brat. You think you are so special, you are going to ruin everything because you didn't get a party. I looked into her eyes. They were blank. There was no love there. There was only panic and the desperate need for control. I am not punishing you. I said, I am stopping you. I pulled my arm free. I walked out of the cafe behind me. I heard her dissolve into fresh sobs. She is confused. She doesn't know what she is saying. I got into my car and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, shaking. You always loved punishing us. It was the ultimate projection. She was the punisher. She was the one who withheld love to shape behavior. But in her mind, my refusal to be a victim was an act of aggression. I drove straight to Elias Thorne's office. Thorne was waiting for me in the conference room. He had a stack of files on the table and a pitcher of water. You look like you saw a ghost, he said. I saw my mother. I said. He grimaced. I told you to stay in the hotel. She ambushed me. I said, it doesn't matter. I didn't say anything incriminatory. Thorne tapped the file in front of him. Good, because their lawyers just sent over a settlement offer. I sat down. Let me see it. He slid the paper across the polished wood. Settlement agreement and mutual release. 1. The trustees agreed to disburse a one-time payment of $50,000 to the beneficiary. 2. The beneficiary agrees to waive all rights to future claims against the trust. 3. The beneficiary agrees to a permanent non-disclosure agreement regarding all trust matters. 4. The beneficiary agrees to voluntarily dismiss the opposition to the conservatorship, which will be instated for a period of 6 months, for administrative purposes. I read it twice. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat. A dark, hysterical thing. They want to pay me $50,000 of my own money. I said, and in exchange, I have to let my father be my conservator. It is an insult. Thorne said, but it tells us 2 things. 1, they are terrified of the hearing. 2, they think you are desperate for cash. I am not signing this. Of course not, Thorne said. But look at the accounting they finally attached. It is partial, heavily redacted. But there is something interesting on page 14. He flipped the document open. He pointed to a line item. August 15, 2012. Educational support / tuition assistance. $22,000. I stared at the date. 2012. I said, I was starting my 2nd year of grad school. Did you receive $22,000? Thorne asked. No. I said, I applied for a private loan that semester. My parents told me the trust was illiquid. They said the market was down and they couldn't sell anything without taking a huge loss. They told me I had to take the loan and that they would help me pay the interest later. Did they help you pay the interest? I shook my head. Never. So, Thorne said, leaning back. On August 15th, they withdrew $22,000 from your trust, labeled it as your tuition, and pocketed it. Then they made you take out a loan for the same amount. They stole it twice. I said, They stole the cash, and they stole my credit. And here is the kicker, Thorne said. He flipped to another page. See this transfer September 4, 2015. $14,000 paid to First National Bank. The credit card. I said, the secret account. Exactly. They used the trust money to pay off the fraudulent credit card they opened in your name. They used your money to clean up their crime. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. It wasn't just mismanagement. It wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping. It was predation. They had looked at me, their daughter, and seen a resource to be mined. We have them. I said, we have a pattern. Thorne said, but the conservatorship hearing is tricky. The standard of proof isn't about fraud. It is about capacity. They don't have to prove they are honest. They just have to prove you are unstable. How do they do that, witnesses? Thorne said, that afternoon. My phone rang. It was Quinn, my college roommate, the girl who gave me the flowers at graduation, the one person outside the family I thought I could trust. I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to her in 8 months. I answered. Kennedy Quinn's voice was hesitant. Hi, Quinn. Oh my God. You picked up. I didn't think you would. Why Ashley called me? Quinn said. She told me a lot of things. She said you were in a cult I repeated. She said you joined some group in Washington state that cuts people off from their families. She said they brainwashed you into changing your name. She wanted me to write a letter for the court. She said if I really cared about you, I would help them extract you. I closed my eyes. A cult. It was creative. It explained the secrecy, the name change, the refusal to talk. It turned my autonomy into victimhood. Did you write the letter I asked? No, Quinn said. I told her to go to hell. I let out a breath. Thank you. Kennedy, Quinn said. Her voice dropped. She has been doing this for years. What do you mean I didn't want to tell you because it seemed cruel. But whenever you weren't around, at parties or dinners, Ashley would talk about you. She would tell people you were delicate. She would say you had episodes. She planted this seed a long time ago, so when you disappeared, everyone was ready to believe you finally snapped. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. The room felt very small. They were preparing the ground. I said, yeah, Quinn said. But listen, I am willing to testify. I can tell the judge she asked me to lie. Thorne says that might help. I said, but Quinn, if you do this, they will come for you too. They will destroy your reputation. I don't care, Quinn said. I saw you that morning at graduation. I saw you waiting for them. I saw the look on your face when you saw that brunch photo. That wasn't a mental breakdown. Kennedy, that was a person realizing they were alone. I will be there. I hung up. I lay back on the pillows. I had spent my life thinking I was the problem. I thought I was too sensitive, too needy, too much. But it was a script written by two people who needed a villain to justify their theft. I stood up. I went to the mirror. I looked at Nora Vance. I am not crazy. I said to the reflection, I am not crazy. I practiced the testimony. Your Honor, I left because I discovered financial irregularities. No, too formal. Your Honor, they stole from me. Too emotional. Your Honor. I am a 35-year-old woman with a steady job, a clean bill of health, and a credit score of 780. My name change was a legal decision to sever ties with abusive relatives. Better, calm, factual, boring. The most devastating truth is the boring one. I spent the evening organizing the documents in Grandma's tin. I matched the dates in the notebook to the dates on the trust withdrawals. June 12, 2010. Withdrew $5,000 for medical expenses. Grandma's note. June 12. Kennedy at my house all weekend. Perfectly healthy. Parents went to Cabo. It was a map of their greed. At 10 o'clock, the night before the hearing, my laptop chimed. New email. The sender was anonymous 1984@protonmail.com. The subject line was blank. I opened it. There was a single attachment, a PDF. I clicked it. It was a scanned document. Authorization of trustee powers. dated 3 days after my 18th birthday. It was the document that gave them control. The document I had supposedly signed. I zoomed in on the signature at the bottom. Kennedy Price. It looked right. The slant was right. The loop on the P was right. But then, I saw it. In the loop of the Y at the end of Kennedy, there was a tiny, almost invisible hesitation mark, a ink blot where the pen had paused, as if the writer was checking a reference. And the dot on the I in Price. I always dotted my I with a quick slash, a downward tick. This dot was a perfect circle, a careful, deliberate point. It was a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. But who sent it? I looked at the email address. 1984. The year my sister was born. But Ashley wouldn't send this. Ashley was driving the getaway car. Unless Ashley wasn't the driver. Unless Ashley was just another passenger who was terrified of crashing. I remembered the phone call. Dad is so stressed. Mom is sick with worry. Ashley was the golden child. But golden children have debts too. Maybe she saw the ship sinking. Maybe she realized that if I went down, I would take everyone with me. And she didn't want to be collateral damage. Or maybe it wasn't Ashley. Maybe it was a secretary at the law firm who had a conscience. Maybe it was the ghost of Great Aunt Sarah. It didn't matter. I had the document. And I had the discrepancy. I printed it. I sat in the dim light of the hotel room. Tomorrow. I would walk into a courtroom. My mother would be there, wearing her best pearls and her saddest face. My father would be there, looking like a distinguished businessman burdened by a wayward daughter. They would tell the world I was broken, and I had a choice. I could defend myself quietly. I could show the judge my pay stubs and my apartment lease and prove I was functional. I could win the conservatorship case without exposing the fraud. I could just walk away and leave them to their secrets. That would be the safe choice. That would be the high road. Or I could burn it all down. I could put the trust withdrawal on the projector. I could put the brunch photo next to the urgent care text. I could put the forged signature next to my real one. I could tell the truth. But if I did that, there was no going back. I wouldn't just be the estranged daughter. I would be the destroyer. I would be the reason my father went to jail. I would be the reason my mother lost her home. They would call me cruel. They would tell everyone I did it for revenge. I looked at the notebook. Left Kennedy with a frozen pizza. I looked at the accounting. Tuition assistance. It wasn't revenge. Revenge is hurting someone because they hurt you. This was accountability. This was refusing to carry their secrets anymore. I wasn't willing to be owned, not by their love, not by their money, and not by their lies. I packed the binder. I packed the tin. I packed the forged signature. I turned off the light. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark and listened to the highway, the sound of cars rushing toward somewhere else. I was done rushing. Tomorrow, I would stand still, and I would let the truth hit them like a freight train. The courtroom was a theater of mahogany and fluorescent light, a space designed to strip away emotion and leave only the cold, hard bones of the truth. I sat at the defendant's table next to Elias Thorne. My hands were folded on the table. They were steady, across the aisle. My family sat in a tableau of curated grief. My mother was wearing a soft blue cardigan, a color chosen to evoke softness, maternal warmth, and harmlessness. She clutched a handkerchief. My father wore a gray suit that was slightly ill-fitting, suggesting a man too distracted by worry to visit his tailor. Ashley sat between them, looking young and wide-eyed, the picture of the concerned sibling. They looked like a family. They looked like victims. Judge Vance, no relation to my new name. A coincidence that felt like a small wink from the universe shuffled the files on his bench. He was an older man with thick glasses and a mouth that turned down at the corners. This is the matter of the Price Family Trust versus Kennedy Elise Price, regarding the petition for conservatorship, he said. My father's lawyer, Marcus Blackwood, stood up. He was smooth, polished, and exuded the kind of confidence that cost $500 an hour. Your Honor, he began, his voice dropping to a somber register. This is a tragedy. We are not here to attack Ms. Price. We are here to save her. He gestured toward me with a pitying hand. Kennedy Price is a beloved daughter, he said, but in the last 6 months, she has suffered a severe break from reality. She has abandoned her home, cut off all contact with a loving support system, assumed a fictitious identity, and is currently living in isolation in a town where she knows no one. These are not the actions of a rational woman. These are the actions of someone in crisis. He paused for effect. The family merely seeks temporary authority to manage her financial assets that are currently frozen due to her refusal to cooperate until she can receive the care she so clearly needs. They do this out of love. He sat down. My mother dabbed her eyes. It was a perfect performance. Thorne stood up. He didn't smooth his tie. He didn't use a somber voice. He sounded like a man reading a grocery list. "Your Honor," he said, "my client is not insane. She is escaping. And she is not here to hide. She is here to do math." Thorne walked to the projector screen set up in the center of the room. The plaintiffs claim my client's disappearance was an act of instability. He said, "We intend to prove it was an act of survival. We intend to prove that for decades. This family has engaged in a systematic campaign of gaslighting, financial theft, and emotional manipulation, and we will start with a timeline." Thorne clicked a remote. The screen lit up. May 18, 2024. The timeline was a stark, black-and-white graphic. It listed the events of graduation morning, the call at 9 o'clock, the claim of the fainting aunt, the claim of the urgent care visit, then, next to it, the time-stamped photo from the garden table, the mimosa toast, the smiles. This was the catalyst, Thorne said, but it was not an isolated incident. He clicked again. The screen filled with data points, the locked cloud folder, the refused access to birth certificates, the credit inquiry from PI Services. Thorne looked at the judge. "You don't hire a skip tracer to find a daughter you are worried about. Your Honor, you call the police. You hire a skip tracer to find a debtor, and that is what they view her as, an asset that got away." Blackwood objected, claiming speculation. The judge overruled him. Then came the testimony. My mother took the stand first. She walked slowly, leaning on the railing as if she were frail. She swore to tell the truth. "Mrs. Price?" Blackwood asked gently. "Why are you here today?" "Because I love my daughter," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "I just want her to be safe. She has always been difficult, sensitive. She takes things the wrong way." "Did you attend her graduation?" Blackwood asked. "We tried," she said. "There was a medical emergency with her aunt. By the time we realized it was a false alarm, we rushed to the venue, but there was no parking. We were frantic. We were driving around, crying, trying to get to her, and the brunch photo. We stopped for food because my husband is diabetic," she said. "We were stress eating. We were heartbroken." Thorne stood up for cross-examination. He walked toward her slowly. "Mrs. Price," he said, "you say you were driving around frantic." "Yes, and yet, at 10:15 in the morning, 10 minutes after the ceremony began, your daughter received a text from your phone asking if she had remembered to renew her car registration." My mother blinked. "I don't recall that." Thorne held up a printout. "Here is the log," he said. "Why would a frantic, heartbroken mother be texting about car registration while searching for parking? I was multitasking." She snapped. The frailty slipped for a second. "Let's talk about the aunt," Thorne said. "You told Kennedy she was at urgent care, but you told Kennedy's grandmother, Joyce Price, that the ceremony had been moved to June." "I never said that," my mother said quickly. "Joyce is old. She gets confused." "She gets confused?" Thorne asked. "Yes. She hears things wrong. We told her the party was in June. She must have mixed it up." Thorne paused. He looked at a paper in his hand. "And did you also tell Mrs. Gable, your neighbor, that Kennedy was in a mental health facility?" My mother stiffened. "I might have said she was getting help, to protect her privacy, to protect her privacy." Thorne repeated, "By telling a neighbor she was institutionalized, it was better than the truth," she cried, "that she ran away like a thief." "A thief?" Thorne asked. "What did she steal?" My mother froze. She realized she had walked into a trap. She stole our peace of mind. She stammered. Thorne didn't let up. Mrs. Price, do you know where your daughter lives now? No. That is why we are here. Do you know where she works? No. Then how? Thorne asked, his voice dropping to a quiet, lethal level. Did you know to send the demand letter to Oakhaven? My mother's eyes darted to Blackwood. Our lawyers found her. She said, but you just said you didn't know where she was. I meant personally. The lawyers handled the address. Thorne nodded. He walked back to the table. One last question. Mrs. Price, you claim you missed the ceremony. You claim you were never inside the building. Yes. Then how? Thorne asked. Did you know Kennedy was holding a bouquet of daisies? The room went silent. My mother blinked. What in your deposition? Thorne said. You stated, she looked so sad standing there with those cheap daisies. I saw a picture. There are no pictures of her with the flowers. Thorne said, she didn't post any. The professional photographer didn't take any because she left immediately. The only people who saw those daisies were the people standing in that parking lot. My mother's mouth opened and closed. She looked like a fish gasping for air. Someone must have shown me. Who? Thorne asked. Who showed you a picture that doesn't exist? Or were you there? Mrs. Price, were you watching from the car? Eating your brunch? Deciding it wasn't worth the effort to get out? I wasn't, she screamed. Her face flushed a blotchy red. Stop twisting my words. You are just like her. You always twist everything. The judge looked at my mother. His expression was unreadable, but the lines around his mouth had deepened. You may step down, the judge said. Ashley was next. She sat in the witness chair with perfect posture. She smiled at the judge. She looked like the reasonable one, the mediator, Ashley. Blackwood asked, has your sister exhibited paranoid behavior in the past? Oh, absolutely, Ashley said. She nodded earnestly. Kennedy has always been very imaginative. She thinks everyone is against her. She thinks we keep secrets. It is really sad. We have tried to include her, but she pushes us away. Thorne approached her. Ms. Price, he said, you heard your mother testify that they were driving around looking for parking during the ceremony. Yes, Ashley said. It was a nightmare. Traffic was bumper to bumper. And you were with them. Yes, I was in the back seat. Thorne clicked the remote. The screen changed. It showed a map, a geolocation tag. This is the metadata from your brunch post, Thorne said. It places you at the garden table at 9:45 in the morning. Ashley didn't flinch. We stopped for coffee, she said. We were on our way. Thorne clicked again. This is a time-stamped receipt from the garden table, he said. It shows an order for 3 entrees, eggs Benedict, French toast, and the steak frites. The check was opened at 9:30 and closed at 11:15. Ashley's smile faltered. Thorne continued. Unless you ate 3 entrees in 5 minutes and then spent 2 hours looking for parking while your phone magically stayed at the restaurant, your timeline is impossible. Ashley's eyes narrowed. She looked at me. There was no sisterly concern in that look. There was only cold, hard calculation. Okay, fine, she said. Her voice lost its breathy sweetness. It dropped an octave. We went to brunch. Is that a crime? We didn't want to sit through 3 hours of boring names for a library degree. We figured we would catch her after. So you lied, Thorne said. We spared her feelings, Ashley snapped. If we told her we didn't want to go, she would have cried. She is a crybaby. We lied to be nice. We lied to be nice. It was the family motto. Thorne sat down. He had what he needed. The cracks were showing, but we needed more than cracks. We needed a crater. Thorne called his next witness. I call the defendant. Kennedy Price. I stood up. I walked to the stand. I felt the eyes of my family on me like physical weights. I swore on the Bible. I sat down. Nora, Thorne said, using my chosen name. It was a subtle power move. Tell the court about the graduation. I looked at the judge. I prepared for 2 years. I said, I worked 2 jobs. I took out loans. I didn't ask them for money. I only asked for their time. I took a breath. when I realized they weren't coming. I said, I checked my phone. I saw the read receipts on my texts. They saw me asking where they were. They saw my panic, and they chose not to answer. I looked at my mother. She refused to meet my eyes. It wasn't the absence that hurt. I said, it was the orchestration. They created a crisis with my aunt to make me worry. They made me wait. They made me doubt my own reality. Standing there, holding flowers my roommate gave me because she pitied me, I realized that this wasn't an accident. It was training. Training the judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. Training me to accept less. Training me to believe that my needs were invisible. Training me to think that if I demanded basic respect, I was being difficult. And if you are trained to believe you are worthless. You don't ask questions about money. You don't look at trust fund statements. You just say thank you for whatever scraps they give you. Blackwood stood up to cross-examine me. He looked annoyed. Ms. Price, he said, you talk about money. You claim you left because of financial irregularities. But isn't it true that you signed a waiver at 18 giving your parents control of your trust? I never signed that waiver. I said. Blackwood smiled. He pulled a document from his folder. I have it right here, he said. A notarized authorization. Dated May 21st, 2008. Is this your signature? He handed it to the bailiff, who handed it to me. I looked at it. It was the document from the anonymous email. Thorne stood up. Your Honor, he said, we request permission to introduce rebuttal evidence regarding this signature. The judge nodded. Proceed. Thorne pulled out a large display board. On the left was the signature Blackwood had just presented. On the right were 3 samples of my signature from my high school ID, my driver's license, and my college application. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, I said, I have always dotted my I with a downward slash. It is a habit I picked up in middle school. I pointed to the real signatures. All had the slash. I pointed to the waiver. This dot is a circle, I said, and the loop on the Y has a hesitation mark, a ink blot. Blackwood scoffed. People's signatures change. This is ridiculous, Thorne interrupted. We also analyzed the document metadata. Your Honor, this document was supposedly created in 2008, but the font used for the header is Calibri Light. Thorne looked at the jury box, then remembered there was no jury. He looked at the judge. Calibri Light was not released to the public until 2013. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating thing. My father's face went gray. He knew. He was the one who had probably typed it up on his new computer 5 years after the fact to cover his tracks. My mother looked at my father with pure venom. They were turning on each other. Then came the final witness. I called Joyce Price. My grandmother walked in. She used a cane, tapping it rhythmically on the floor. She didn't look at my parents. She walked straight to the stand. She sat down and adjusted her glasses. Mrs. Price, Thorne said, you are the mother of the plaintiff, James Price. I am, she said. Regrettably, a ripple of nervous laughter went through the back of the room. Did you receive an invitation to Kennedy's graduation? I did not, she said. I was told by my son and daughter-in-law that the date had been changed to June. I wrote it in my calendar. She held up the biscuit tin. I have the calendar here, she said, along with 30 years of notes. She opened the tin. She began to read. June 12, 1998, Kennedy's piano recital. Parents claimed a migraine. Saw them at the movies. December 25, 2005. Parents claimed Kennedy lost her Christmas check. I found the check in James's wallet. She looked up at the judge. This is not a mental health crisis, Your Honor, she said firmly. This is a girl who woke up. My granddaughter is the sanest person in this room. The only thing she is guilty of is finally refusing to be the victim. The judge looked at the tin. He looked at the font on the screen. He looked at my parents. He cleared his throat. I have heard enough, he said. My father stood up. Your Honor, please, we just want... Sit down. Mr. Price, the judge barked. My father sat. The court finds that the plaintiffs have failed to meet the burden of proof for a conservatorship. the judge said. "There is no evidence of incapacity. In fact, the defendant appears to be highly capable, organized, and credible." He turned his gaze to my parents. "Furthermore, the evidence presented regarding the signature and the trust accounting raises serious questions of fraud and breach of fiduciary duty." My mother gasped. "I am denying the petition for conservatorship," the judge said, "and I am issuing a sua sponte order. I am freezing the assets of the Sarah Price Education and Welfare Trust effective immediately. I am ordering a full forensic accounting of all Price family holdings to be conducted by an independent auditor appointed by this court." "No," my father shouted. He jumped up. "You can't do that." "That is my business. If you have nothing to hide—" "Mr. Price, you have nothing to worry about," the judge said coldly. "But if that font date is correct, I would suggest you get a criminal defense attorney. This hearing is adjourned." The gavel banged. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. My father looked at me. His face was twisted into a mask of pure fury. The concerned father act was gone. The mask had disintegrated. "You ungrateful bitch," he mouthed. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him. I walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was chaotic. A local reporter who had sniffed out the drama was there with a cameraman. My family was huddled in a corner, arguing with Blackwood. I walked toward the exit. "Kennedy," I stopped. I didn't turn around. A hand grabbed my arm. I spun around. It was my mother. Her eyes were wild. Her mascara was running. But not from sad tears. From angry ones. "Fix this," she hissed. Her nails dug into my jacket. "Go back in there and tell the judge it was a mistake. Tell him you lied." I looked at her hand on my arm. I remembered being 6 years old, holding that hand while she crossed the street. I remembered being 16, wanting that hand to smooth my hair. I remembered being 34, wanting that hand to hold a bouquet of flowers at my graduation. I reached out and peeled her fingers off my arm, one by one. I stepped back. "No," I said. "Kennedy, please," she cried, her voice shifting back to the pleading tone. "We will lose the house. We will lose everything." "Then you should have thought about that before you stole from me," I said. I turned my back on her. I walked through the heavy glass doors of the courthouse and into the afternoon sun. The air was cold and crisp. My phone was buzzing in my pocket. I knew who it was. It was Ashley. It was my father. It was the flying monkeys sent to drag me back. I took the phone out. I looked at the screen. Dad calling. I pressed the side button. I silenced it. I walked to my rental car. I saw Grandma Joyce standing by the curb, waiting for her ride. She saw me. She raised a hand and gave me a small, sharp salute. I saluted back. I got into the car. I put the key in the ignition. I didn't know what would happen next. There would be audits. There would be criminal charges. There would be screaming voicemails and guilt trips and attempts to destroy my reputation. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, merging into the traffic of the city that used to own me, I realized I wasn't afraid. The invisible string that had tied me to them, the string of guilt, of obligation, of the desperate need to be loved, had been cut. I was Nora Vance. I was Kennedy Price. I was whoever I wanted to be. And for the first time in 35 years, the road ahead was entirely mine. Thank you for listening to Kennedy's story. It is a story about the hardest kind of revenge, the kind that requires you to save yourself first. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from a quiet room, a busy commute, or maybe a walk in the park? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. We explore the complexities of justice, family, and the moment you finally decide to fight back. Share your thoughts in English. I read every single one. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, the best revenge is a life well lived.